North Korea is a mysterious and closed country whose existence has attracted the attention of the whole world over the past decades. At the same time, the focus is often on the political realities of life in North Korea, leaving questions about the role of women in this society in the shadows. The lives of North Korean women are full of contradictions and diversity, which are often overlooked in standard studies of the country. Understanding their situation requires an in-depth analysis of such aspects as women's rights, their economic situation, everyday problems, socio-cultural traditions, and, of course, health. This article aims to present a more complete picture of the lives of North Korean women. North Korea's official legislation declares equality of women and men in all aspects of life. However, in reality, these rights often remain only on paper. Economic and social discrimination, which is common in many countries of the world, is taking on a more severe form in North Korea. Despite their formal rights, women face systemic discrimination in the labor market, where men's professional qualities are often perceived as more valuable. This leads to a situation where women are more likely to be employed in temporary jobs with low pay, such as agricultural or industrial tasks, which are generally underestimated. The observance of women's rights is also hampered by the repressive regime, which suppresses any attempts at activism. Women who try to fight for their rights or speak out against the system often face severe repression. Most often, such actions end in prison or even more serious measures for them, which covers the fear of destroying their reputation. Historically, Korean society has defined a woman's role as a housewife. The focus was on men's values and traditions, which formed the cultural code. Even in the post-war years, when women began to enter the labor market, they were limited in their choice of professions. Many of them were forced to work in sectors considered women's, such as education and healthcare. However, this does not mean that women did not contribute to the economy. Many women worked in the fields, engaged in agriculture. Their work often went unrecognized and improperly paid. In recent decades, given the changing economic situation and the informal sector, the role of women has become increasingly important. Nevertheless, traditional ideas about gender roles continue to influence public perceptions and attitudes of women. Even today, when some sectors of the economy are opening their doors to women, cultural norms are much stronger than legislative initiatives. This creates a paradox when norms remain at the core of social consciousness and limit women in their aspirations. Women's political activism in North Korea remains largely in the background. Women who reach high positions are usually those who are close to the top of power or were in close relationships with leaders. However, they are more likely to represent the interests of the regime than ordinary women. Political ideology is such that it makes women feel like a wonderful complement who should only perform certain roles and not be equal participants in political decisions. Women working in party structures can influence issues related to social policy, but this influence is limited by party ideology. This creates a situation in which their strength in practice often turns out to be superficial. It is important to understand that this does not mean a complete lack of activity. At the local level, women sometimes organize into groups to support each other. But these groups operate on an undeserved basis and are tightly controlled. Education in North Korea is considered compulsory and theoretically accessible to all. However, due to the political and economic situation, the level of education of women and the quality of education they receive leaves much to be desired. As already mentioned, educational programs are often aimed at meeting the needs of the state apparatus, which leads to the formation of victims of casual education, limiting their career prospects. Women often begin their careers after graduation, but the amount of knowledge and skills acquired in colleges is often insufficient. This leads to the fact that many people are looking for additional training or retraining opportunities, which becomes a good opportunity to improve their personal conditions or may lead to a new quality of life. But often moving up the career ladder is fraught with great difficulties, and success is associated with successful connections and patronage. A woman's family life in North Korea begins to take shape very early. Many get married and start a family as soon as they reach adulthood. This puts an additional emotional and financial burden on them, since traditionally a woman is responsible for managing the household, raising children, and supporting her spouse. Women have to juggle responsibilities, which can lead to both physical and emotional exhaustion. According to research, the average number of children in North Korean families ranges from 2 to 3. Maintaining a family on small budgets becomes a real art when expenditure items do not match income levels. It requires a lot of effort and ingenuity. Women are engaged in multi-level work, including informal activities. They can sell their own handiwork, as well as work in the private sector to provide for their family. There are other methods of survival. Own products, such as vegetables, can be sold at local markets. However, these approaches also pose risks, as it is necessary to act within the framework of informal norms, which sometimes leads to penalties related to unsatisfactory enforcement of state laws. North Korean women often face nutritional deficiencies, which in turn affects their health. Modern living conditions, including economic and political problems, continue to leave a significant impact on women's overall health. According to the World Health Organization, the level of malnutrition among women and children in North Korea remains high. This leads to growth problems, and food intake is most often limited to rice, potatoes, and cabbage, while protein and vitamin intake is completely out of line. Due to a lack of nutrients and a low standard of living, many women suffer from various diseases. This thinness and lack of energy become factors that prevent women from fulfilling their roles at work, as well as in the family. Women are often forced to ignore illnesses and physical ailments in order to continue working and supporting their family. Traditional notions of shame for showing weakness also affect how women perceive their health and well-being. The sexual exploitation of women in North Korea is a serious problem that is often reported by human rights organizations. Many cases of violence and exploitation go unreported, as women are afraid to report their grievances for fear of government reprisals. This creates an atmosphere of impunity for criminals who exploit women's vulnerability. Unlike in other countries where such crimes can be investigated, in North Korea it will not be perceived as a crime, but rather as a lack of the victim's fortitude. In general, social stereotypes and cultural norms limit women's ability to receive adequate help or protection. It is only in rare cases, when repression becomes well known, that public self-expression can occur, causing public outrage. But as a rule, gender-based violence, including violent crimes, is ignored at the societal level. The migration of women from North Korea is another multi-dimensional problem. Women in the districts often take risky steps, leaving the country in search of better treatment and economic opportunities. However, many of them become victims of human trafficking in neighboring countries such as China. After they fall into the trap, they are often forced into prostitution or forced marriage, which makes their existence even more difficult. The process of trying to leave is also full of risks, as they face the consequences of possible refusal abroad, problems with legalization, and, as a result, forces them to take measures that can further undermine them. If such women eventually return home, they are severely punished by the government, even in the difficult circumstances and dangers they find themselves in. In North Korea, women's appearance plays an important role and is subject to strict controls. Fashion trends must meet the requirements set by the party. Women's clothing is often uniform and modest, and fashion accessories are frowned upon. A wrong move or hairstyle can lead to punishment, which inhibits their self-expression. Most women tend to follow the guidelines in order to avoid problems with law enforcement agencies. This diet also has a strong effect on women's health. The lack of choice and expression of their opinions affects their psycho-emotional state, leading to depression and a sense of hopelessness. The idea of beauty and fashion is not perceived here as self-expression, but rather as a means of survival. The systematic control of art and literature fits into the overall picture of strict censorship. Women authors and artists who seek to express their thoughts and creative ideas often find themselves under pressure from the system. Their work must meet the expectations and ideology of the state. Despite this, some women find ways to bring their ideas to society. Secret literary and artistic communities are becoming an important means of self-expression, allowing women to share their experiences, dreams, and hopes. These works cover a wide range of topics, from personal suffering to issues of social justice, but their authors must always be careful to avoid possible consequences. Nevertheless, these attempts to find a voice and significance often highlight the need for change and the opportunity for women's empowerment. With the beginning of economic reforms in North Korea, which began in the early 2000s, women have more opportunities to run businesses and work in the private sector. In a state-run economy that was usually prone to shortages of goods, many women began to engage in small businesses, which in turn gave them the opportunity to become more independent actors in society. Nevertheless, innovations are accompanied by new challenges. Entrepreneurship is not regulated at the proper level and requires not only skills from women, but also adaptability, caution, and even conformity. These circumstances can make it difficult to do business, as the state sometimes intervenes, and candidates may also be subject to review by local authorities. Although the economic awakening offers new perspectives, opportunities remain limited. The development of technology and access to the internet have made possible new forms of communication and self-expression for North Korean women. Some of them are in informal groups where they can discuss various topics and solve their issues together. It also gives them access to information about the world outside of North Korea, allowing them to realize their rights and opportunities. Nevertheless, access to information and communication is strictly controlled, and members of such groups risk reprisals. Despite the fact that women's solidarity and information exchange can contribute to improving the quality of life, the need to remain anonymous and not be openly active, although it causes concern, also allows them to realize their possibility of involvement. For many North Korean women, the dream of studying abroad becomes a symbol of hope and change. This is perceived as a chance not only to expand their horizons, but also to return to their native country with new knowledge and skills that will help them improve their lives and the lives of their family. However, this dream is unattainable for most, as strict rules on leaving the country actually prevent attempts to leave North Korea. Many girls seeking education tend to find themselves completely isolated from international opportunities in such programs, except when it comes to short-term internships and exchanges planned by the government. This further underscores the closeness of the system. Even beyond the borders of the country, educational opportunities represent a tough control strategy. The desire for peace and stability prevails among North Korean women. Polls show that most women want the authorities to respect their rights and freedom, and they dream of their children growing up in a world free from violence and fear. The nationalist ideology of the current government does not sufficiently take into account the real problems of people's lives, and women are interested in actively participating in peace processes and the restoration of justice. The desire for change and freedom, as an integral part of their lives, becomes the foundation on which their hopes are built. All this creates an idea of the position of women in North Korea as those who strive for important goals and dreams of a better future for themselves and their families. The lives of women and girls in North Korea are a complex interweaving of harsh realities, cultural canons, and aspirations for freedom. Every woman in this country carries her own unique story, full of hope, struggle, and dreams of a better future. Understanding their fate and rights is an important step towards shaping public opinion and upholding women's rights, not only in North Korea, but also in other countries that face similar challenges. We must all be attentive to their voices and strive to develop a just and equal society for all.